Hello, class. This will be a lecture covering Chapter 4 on the text. This will focus on different types of studio cameras. So this will not be a comprehensive camera tutorial. We won't be discussing, setting up camera aspect ratios, how to do an exposure, that sort of thing. But we will discuss, some of the types of cameras you might encounter in a studio or in a or any kind of studio environment, field production, or not necessarily, not necessarily field production, although sometimes you will find them. We will talk a little bit about sound, specifically microphones, and then we'll also talk about some floor directing. Um, Depending on the class, I have included already a link to floor directing YouTube video where well, I did put the one at least that will give you the visual examples of what a lot of these floor directions may look in the lecture. For example, I did include a small like a image, if you will, from the text that does give you some very commonly used floor directions. So, and then watch the video. It's only like 4 minutes at the most to give you some floor directing, again, some insights and how to do the floor direction, and also if you're not directing, but if you're a camera operator, and especially if you're in the 130 course or one of the 101 courses, these are this will help you understand what they mean if you're receiving those instructions from the director. So let's get started. Let's go ahead and take a look at chapter 4. Let's go ahead and share screen. We're discussing um, uh, the studio cameras, mics, and floor directing. I'll stop my video too. All right. So let's just focus on that. So our introduction. We're going to we'll be speaking about two common tech production jobs: studio camera and floor director. So studio camera refers to the person assigned to operate studio television camera. Again, this is going to be different from a field camera or your typical SLR in your smartphone camera. In many studios, each camera will have an operator. However, definite trend in studio-based camera work is the robotic and remote controlled cameras. And that's because we're not talking about, again, we're not talking about field production or any major creative camera usage. We wanted to get that. So it comes from another maybe fun or I've had another similarity or the commonality that get the shot. I mean, that's sort of the philosophy. We want to get the shot, but just know that in studio camera, it is mostly following, capturing content. That's why when you watch news, whether you're watching CNN, C-SPAN, or format, they all follow a protocol language, right? If we were taking visual literacy or visual media, then we would probably read the study of science and soul. Just from what they already wrote. Floor director, on the other hand, is the boss about all of the other technical jobs in the studio, so or fill in if someone's missing. The floor director's primary job functions as the eyes, ears, and mouth of the director in a lot of ways to some extent. So sometimes they're white, that's going to be the number, camera 1, camera 2, etc., etc. So the number becomes a proper name. So camera 1, help me coil this cable. Studio camera continued. When you see the camera, they're usually on a pedestal. This is the mount for the studio TV camera. Pedestal mount cameras are connect to the control room via a camera cable, so you must be careful or take care when walking around so you don't trip on anything. Camera cable itself is a cable that carries the video from the television camera to the control room. And the wheel lock is a lock that's located on the pedestal dolly wheel that prevents the wheels from rotating so that it keeps it in place. We will discuss dollies too in more detail in a moment. One of the keys is to drive safe. So a lot of these studio cameras will have a pedestal steering wheel. This is a wheel that is located mid-level on a studio camera pedestal. These are used for pushing, pulling, and steering a studio television camera. So it's this round guy right in here. So you've probably seen those, and that's how you grab the whole unit and control the whole unit. Notice though that we have, here's the camera itself, the body, viewfinders, which we're looking into. Here's the head that we place our camera unit on. This head will have usually like a lock mechanism. Here we go. This is usually called a dovetail or a some kind of a mount. These are the handlebars that typically you're holding on to. And here's the pedestal in general. So unlocking the locks. Typically, you'll find a column lock, which is a pedestal lock that prevents the camera from moving vertically. We also have other kinds of locks to prevent the camera from moving when we don't want them to move. You also have the tilt lock, which is a pedestal lock that prevents the camera from tilting up or tilting down, and the pan lock, which prevents the camera from pivoting left and right. There is overall a master lock too, though. That's a large spring-loaded pin that's located through the pedestal head. And remember, this was the pedestal head right here, right where the big plate connects to the pedestal tripod unit. This master lock prevents the camera from tilting also. So parts and pieces. There's a viewfinder. We saw that a second ago. This is a small video monitor located on the top of the studio television camera. This shows the operator what the camera is seeing. It's what you look into. On top of that, usually on the viewfinder, you'll find the tally light, which indicates whether the camera is active or selected to the program bus. It'll be turned on. Then you have return video, which is a feature on the camera, typically located as a button on the servo zoom control, and that usually will be like a little unit. If you're new to it, the floor director, someone will show you or tell you what it is or where it is. When activated, this will allow the camera operator to see various, or as routed, video sources in a camera viewfinder. Remember that viewfinder up here. And if you look at it, if we pay close attention, it does look like a small monitor, right? So sometimes they can be upwards of 10 inches. So it is a good size, so it can break down so you can see little windows. Now let's talk about aspects of the camera itself. So camera control unit and power, or CCU. This is a remote control for the studio television camera. This is located in the control room. This camera control unit controls the power, the color balance, iris, and white and black balance, not to be confused with the robotic pedestal. So this controls a lot of the exposure elements of the camera itself. As part of the camera, some of you may have heard these terms being used, CCD and CMOS. These are the chips that are inside the camera that control the images. So the specific definition of each one, though, is CCD stands for charge coupled device. It's a type of imaging device inside the unit of the camera itself. These converts the light into a video signal. Professional cameras typically have 3 CCDs, one for red, one for green, one for blue. The larger the CCD, the higher the possible resolution. Typically, professional grade CCDs are 1/2 inch or larger. This is a little older. Most of CCDs, even then, were about quarter. Well, I guess because the consumer models were typically a quarter, third of an inch. But now we're looking at about an inch for a lot of these. And we really don't see CCDs anymore. This was more in use in the 90s into the early aughts, early 2000s. Now we see the CMOS chips. These are complementary metal oxide semiconductor chips. Um, Again, the more common type of chip found in most cameras, including studio television cameras. The CMOS chip also converts the light into a signal, and the professional ones typically have three also chips, like the CCDs for red, green, and blue. This is typically what we see, and a lot of them now, we don't necessarily have the three. The one chip can be enough for many, for most. Prompter power and input. So typically you turn it on. This is where you turn on the unit itself. Camera operator will need to ensure that the unit is switched to the appropriate input. Typically it's the teleprompter output or video program for the weather section of the show. So we need to make sure we know what we're looking at. Intercom. The intercom unit. This is the off-air communication system. Remember, off-air, which means people at home will not hear this. This is only for the studio and anyone who's inside of the studio. This includes the staff of the control room, the studio, master control, and other production crew as needed. Remember, only for the unit and off-air. People will not hear this. It's composed of a headset, which is a component of the unit, worn on the head, contains the headphone and the microphone. It's got a belt pack, small box, that connects to the headset, and audio cable. It controls intercom channel selections, typically headset volume and headset mic activation. We still have these in use. Now, another thing that you'll see is an XLR cable. These are the 3-wire audio cables, typically 3-pin. These are the cables that we are using ourselves in our program. So you'll see those constantly. And these are the big controllers that you'll see on the bottom of the Zoom audio recorders that we have. They use the XLR is the big ones that they can record to. Camera operations. Here's where we'll talk specifically about each one of these means. If we pan, tilt, drag, or friction, this is an adjustment on the pedestal head that will provide resistance to the right-left pivot control of the camera. So all of these, the frictions themselves is a smooth movement via resistance, or it allows the smooth movement via resistance. And if any of you have ever moved one of these before, you'll notice like, yeah, there is resistance. If you try to move one of those and compare that to something that doesn't have friction or resistance, you'll notice that, oh yeah, that other one might move easier, but they're a lot more herky-jerky. And you can usually tell when you're watching video and you're seeing someone that's, panning or tilting and without resistance, it'll be usually a lot more herky-jerky, right? It won't be as smooth, and it will appear to the movement will be less consistent. And what we want is consistency, because we're trying to hide the fact that there's someone filming. We just want this to be sort of a more of this allows the audience to feel like they are discovering the footage. That's what I'm trying to say. Set focus. Set focus is a command cue instructing the camera operator to zoom in as far as possible to the target subject. This is typically followed by the careful adjustment of the focus control. Now, how do we do this? Well, the camera operator usually will zoom in as far as possible to the target. This can be any of the talent's eyeball or something on their head, because that has a lot of detail. So eyes first and then head is second, because that's, as humans, this is what we pay attention to first. That's another reason why we do that. Camera operator will then need to adjust the focus control to get the most crisp image possible. And if you don't have some sort of talent available, then try the edge of their chair or the chair in general, because that's where they're going to be sitting. That's why we have that point here. We also have the shot list, which is a list of camera shots that includes framing and composition information. So this will take a lot of that thinking out for you. You just really have to follow the directions. Camera commands. Now these are common commands that begin with the director that identifying the camera by number and then specifying the desired action. Remember, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, etc., by who is operating that camera. So a pan. Now we're going to talk specifically about what these different words mean. And we've all heard, maybe we've all heard them. I know before I even took any classes in a film school myself, or any classes in film production, I would use a lot of these terms interchangeably, but know that they are very specific. The words actually are directions for certain specific movements, not just for general movements and that we can just use in regular conversation. A pan, for example, is a command cue for the camera operator to pivot the camera left or right. So panning is for left and right. We don't pan up or pan down. We only pan left and right. If we go up and down, that becomes a tilt. That's a command to pivot the camera up or downward. If we have a dolly or track, that's a command cue for the operator to roll the camera toward or away from the set or the talent. And even in our program, we do have dolly track. However, if we want to move left or right, that's called a truck or a crab. This is moving left or right. It's called a crab because that's the way crabs move, right? They move left and they move right. Zoom operations. This is a command cue to engage the servo zoom controller, a zoom in or a zoom out. A lot of these are pressure sensitive, and when you press further on them, they zoom in or out faster. If you relieve some of that pressure, usually it tends to slow down. Here's some tips for you. It's best if the operator becomes highly proficient in the use of the studio camera, so that you can be of value to the director and you don't have questions. And when they give you the direction, you just can then take the command and do it, rotely. You just want to do it as quickly as possible and without any help, especially if this is a live show. You want to attempt to anticipate the director, which means staying one step ahead of what the director may need. So if one talent is speaking, or if let's say you're the weather operator, camera 2 or camera 3, camera 1 is on the anchor, and they're saying, well, next coming up will be new weather. So you'll know that you'll want to be ready to go with your maybe a 3/4 master shot of the weather operator, or make sure that they're ready to go, that you're in focus. You will begin and end each camera move with a decent composition. So you'll want to have a good composition when you start, and then even when you end. Start a move on a good shot and end on a well-composed shot. So that's always a something that beginner camera operators should practice. Have composition. So when you're ready on your shot, start with your good composition, do your movement, and end on good composition. We must be consistent. We must be smooth. The speed of a zoom and the speed of a move should be always as consistent and smooth from beginning to end. We don't want anything to be jarring, because the audience will notice it, and it will make them notice the camera operator more as opposed to the content that's being filmed. The director should never have to issue a command twice, so always be listening, always be available, and never use the intercom system as a personal walkie-talkie. Not only is it poor form, but when the director speaks, the crew listens. So if you're talking, the director can issue commands. We want to be able to know what striking the camera unit means. This is when we put it away. The unit will have to be powered down. We'll have to make sure the viewfinder is dimmed, and it's not uncommon for that to have a separate power down control as opposed to the camera. We want to recoil or wrap the camera cable. The camera will need to be reparked and entirely locked down, out of the way of anybody, so they don't trip over it. And finally, we put the intercom unit away and make sure it's properly stowed, so that whether you're working the camera or someone else is working the camera, you can continue from where we last were in production. Let's talk a little bit about composition. Now, really what we want to do is rely, and we don't have this note here, but we do want to rely on the general rule of thirds. And that's where we imagine 3 categories on our viewfinder that are evenly spaced apart. So there's a top, a middle, and a bottom. There's a left, a middle, and a right. So you want to imaginarily, in your imagination, divide the space of the viewfinder into sections that are evenly spaced apart, left to right and from top to bottom, in 3 sections. Headroom is when we have the visual space between the top of the talent's head and the top of the image frame. That headroom, though, is usually dictated by that rule of third, in that we typically put the eye line of the talent on that top rule of third. Do a Google search for rule of third if this confuses you. And again, this might be something that we go over in the lab anyhow. Now, with that rule of third, we want to make sure that we balance that out with headroom, because if we're following a rule of third, but we give too much headroom, that means visually that there's too much space between the talent's head and the top of the picture, and it will look unbalanced. It won't look right. Now, usually if we follow the rule of third, where we put the talent's eyes on the line, on that top line, that usually will eliminate that issue, but sometimes we have to break the rule if there's too much headroom. We also have lead room or looking room. This is the visual space given the frame for the talent to walk into or look into. Now, we follow the rule of thirds. That means if we're doing those lines vertically, then you put the talent or their eye and their head on the first line so that they have the two other areas to look into. And that's typically what's going on. Again, we'll discuss this with visual examples in the lab. Floor directing. Actually here, I'll give you guys a quick idea. Let me do a quick video here, bring it up so you guys can see that. For just a second, we'll do a stop share. So rule of thirds, so we'll have one line here and the other line here. So we have 1, 2, 3. Eyeballs usually go on that top line. And if you do that properly, this is usually taken care of. And now the other line goes, one's here, and the other one's here. So this side on the left, the middle, and the right. And so if I want lead room, I usually put my eyes here. So I have this lead room. Okay. And so here would be more or less a balance what we do. So my eyeball would be kind of on those lines here, like on that cross, like that. That's usually what we're talking about. So I just want to give you a quick example. Rule of thirds. Let's see, we don't need that no more. Okay, floor directing. Now let's talk some floor directing, and then we're going to talk a little bit of audio. So we're almost there. So the floor director is a senior production staff position in the studio, and their primary responsibility is to work with the talent. But sometimes the job requires rendering assistance to either camera operators, the gaffers. Gaffers, remember, are electricians, audio technicians, and gaffers also work with the lights. Audio technicians and others who work in the studio environment. So they can be a gopher in a way. They're roaming, or those of you played soccer, you know, like a sweeper. An in-studio representative of the director, that's what they are. So they are sort of the face of the director who's in the control room. The floor director is also responsible for communicating with the talent or the anchors on the set, and for cueing the talent, for assisting the talent with technical requirements of the television studio. And they also were responsible for hosting any guests in the studio that may be part of the given program. Like if we have people that are, again, visiting, whatnot, they make sure that they're comfortable and help them with any directions. During pre-production, the floor director will start with the rundown or the running order. This is the outline of the television program that lists the segments of the program. So they have to know exactly what's happening. Television programs follow a fairly specific technical recipe in order to reduce confusion among the different production crew. And as mentioned in the other lectures, remember, there's kind of an aspect of rote, especially if we're talking like a news program. You know, things happen in a certain order. You know, top news of the day, then you have weather, then you have like your sports, and then you're concluding. It all kind of happens the same way over and over and over. Therefore, whenever you have any major changes to the rundown, they will need to be identified and sorted out among before you go on the air, because we don't want people getting confused. The floor director also needs to prepare the intercom setup in order to communicate with the control room and the rest of the production crew, so they have to make sure they have that audio aspect already ready to go. Floor directors will pre-check to be sure the lighting grid is powered up properly. They can also assist the lighting director, again, any gaffers, changing out bulbs if necessary or if needed. They can assist the talent with their microphones, again, and if there are guests, they definitely need to help. Motors on wheels need to be placed where they can be seen by all, but the cabling will need to be dressed so that the wires cannot be run over by cameras, tripped over by talent or guests, etc. So they also make sure this is all taken care of, make sure that no one's going to trip or fall over any kinds of production gear. So when we have a floor director putting microphones, how do we do that? Well, the objective is to mount the microphone unobtrusively, yet close enough to the mouth of the talent to get a strong audio signal. So a good rule of thumb to follow is do like an outstretched heavy metal rocker or like a hang 10 if any of you surf or been to Hawaii. You know, like this signal that surfers use to each other. The thumb is placed on the anchor's chin, with the anchor head being level and the hand rotated so that the pinky points to a spot on the chest of the talent. Here, let me give you another visual on that. So what that means, so they put this as heavy metal, but I mean, heck, you can just do this. And that would be chin here. And so we'd say, okay, that's where the microphone would go. That's a good rule of thumb to use. And that works for most people. All right, let's go back to sharing. The second objective is to dress the cable once we have it on the talent to connect the microphone head to the microphone power pack down the back or front of the talent's shirt. Now the microphone head can then sneak between the shirt front buttons to ride on a lapel or a tie, or you can even mount it on a collar. Now, sometimes we can't hide this, you know, especially if the person's wearing a t-shirt. So wherever you put it, people are going to see it. So, I mean, sometimes I just clip it on right into the front of the t-shirt, because, if you clip it onto the neck, you know, and the person is moving, you'll get that ruffling sound and you'll keep hearing it. And sometimes it does no good because the microphone is pointing away from the mouth. So, I mean, sometimes I just have erred on the side of, oh, well, there's a microphone, you can see it. But it's also like, you know what, this is a film and I think it's forgivable. It all depends on what you're doing, especially if it's a black shirt. Sometimes I'll just pin it on because it's not always so obvious. Now, the cable between the microphone head and the microphone power pack should be hardly seen. So you can even use wire or like a little piece of gaffer's tape to tape it to the back of a shirt. The power puck should be mounted on a belt pocket or the belt line of the pants. And we do typically want to put those on the back, so it's the rear is best. And then again, you can sometimes coil that cable and then either tie it up or tape it up so that it's not, flailing around so that the talent doesn't get caught on something. Types of microphones. So if any of you've done interviews, you've used a lavalier. These are the most common type of studio microphones. They're also called lapel mics. They're small and unobtrusive. They're the tiny little microphones that we use. We have lots of those in our studio program, and we use those because I think ours have XLR connectors, so those will go into the Zoom. Those are going to be the higher in a way, they're a higher end microphone because the XLRs tend to have a better connection. I think part of it is that when we use a 3.5 or an eighth of an inch microphone connection, at least 3.5 millimeter for sure, sometimes the way that the cables are wired, you could have problems and create a buzzing sound, and part of that is attenuation, which means that the frequency of the audio itself can have interference with the length of the cable and the type of the way it's wired up and coiled and whatnot. There's a lot of aspects to it. I'm not an audio expert, but I know it has related to some of those aspects, where I know I've purchased cables that have certain attenuation because they work better with certain types of recorders. The ones that we have, you shouldn't have any problem with most recorders, though. Now, when we talk handheld, now we're talking about microphones. Most common type of field microphone, these are the ones that we see where the talent is holding the microphone. These are designed to be held in the hand. We have shotgun microphones. These are long microphones that usually are long and cylindrical in shape. We do have several of those. We typically put those on the end of a boom, and the XLR cable can run down the boom and can connect to the recorder itself. Um, and or you can put on a shotgun microphone on top of your camera as well. We also have stand or desktop microphones. These are types of microphones that are designed to stand by themselves on a tabletop or other service. These are also designed for audio control booth applications, and they're similar to handhelds in that regard. That um, they might even just be a handheld microphone that is on a stand. And we also have boundary microphones, or PZMs. These are flat-shaped microphones designed to be mounted on flat surfaces. If any of you have ever been in a conference call and had like a phone that sits in the middle, that is a form of boundary microphone right there. Mic pickup or polar patterns. Now, omnidirectional, these are microphone pickups or polar patterns that acquire sound in all directions. These are typically open, and again, these are typically used in meetings. But then we have unidirectional or cardioid. These pick up sound in one direction because cardioid actually means heart-shaped. If you've ever noticed the talent in any show where they kind of point the microphone to someone's mouth, well, that's what that's for, because it's kind of the microphone is going to be focusing in that direction. A supercardioid, these microphones pick up sound in a unidirectional fashion that is both narrow and extended in sensitivity. An increased amplifier to strengthen version of the cardioid. So some of those too, even if the person is standing next to you, if you're pointing away, you can't hear them. That's how sensitive these are. A hypercardioid, which is an enhanced version of cardioid with added dimension to rear sensitivity. The pattern acquires sound in one direction with narrow and distance extended characteristics. So I'm not sure if we have some of these in our cage, but you can definitely ask. And then we have the ultracardioid. The microphone picks up sound in a very, very narrow unidirectional fashion with extended sensitivity work, especially with distance, but it's kind of like a gun in that you do have to point at what you're picking up or what audio you want to pick up. Here's some notes regarding cardioid patterns. Enhanced sensitivity to the front of the microphone does give you limited sensitivity to the rear of the microphone, but remember, it's to the front, so you have to point at whatever you want to pick up. Microphones are manufactured in a bidirectional polar pattern, but are not commonly used in typically studio, field, or electronic news gathering, ENG, or electronic field production applications. So things to just keep in mind. Sound check. Now, once the microphones are hooked up, the floor director will often assist the audio technician with microphone checks for each microphone that will be used in the show. Because again, this is all related to them helping out with setups. The floor director should already have access to replacement microphones, batteries, and XLR cables, just in case you need to troubleshoot or one of the something is not working properly. Remember, the name of the game for a lot of this is quick thinking, and if you're a floor director, that's part of your job description. So to continue with floor directing, number one, we communicate. Once the talent is in position on the set, the floor director should be sure to discuss any technical changes in the rundown or other blocking changes that are planned with the entire studio staff. So yes, while the name of the game is communication, I would also probably put in here, it's also about managing expectations. What are we in for? The more that we know, the fewer there is potential for people to either miscommunicate or misunderstand whatever the directors, what direction they are given. So as long as they know what's going on, this is why in pre-production you communicate all changes to your crew immediately. Specifically because you're going to be cueing the talent and studio crew. So the cues that the director gives will be either audible cues of the director or assistant director, or they're going to be translated into silent hand signals or gesture. Now, this is all determined by the conditions of the microphones. For example, if the mics are hot, the cues will be silent. If the mics are off, the cues can be audible. The whole point is to never interfere with the show. And the floor director should set active camera, the camera that's in the program or next to the immediately following camera, the camera that will be in the preview monitor or the one that's coming up next. So they're kind of always in the hotspot or where the action will be. And our last slide of the day, sample directions, the floor director and the director. So here are some examples in terms of cues. So like, for example, the floor director may speak 1 minute. They can show one finger. They can speak 30 seconds. They will do cross arms or a C-shaped hand. If it's 50 seconds, they'll put up a fist. And if it's a standby, they'll put a full hand out with their palm out and their fingers up. I know this all sounds very abstract, but the examples are going to be in the lab. Now, if you're responding to commands from the director, here's what the floor director will hear. They will hear the word cue. So then the floor director will swing from standby downward towards the client. And so if they hear wrap, then they will put their hand, fist, or finger and rotate it in the air. That's like if they need to wrap it up, like wrap it up. Like something's happened and we need to finish. Or maybe the person's going long-winded and they lost their sense of time. Cut. The finger cuts across the neck. If they hear stretch, that means the hands pull imaginary taffy. Now, when they hear stretch, that means they need to make their segment last a little bit longer. Ready to swing, the arms out with both hands pointing at the active camera. So that means we're going to change. We're going to swing from camera 1 to camera 2. Swing, both hands sweep towards the running camera or the incoming camera. So ready to swing and swing. Remember, we discussed some of those commands in a previous lecture. And then we have take. The arms out, both hands pointing at the new active camera. Remember the difference between ready and take. So one of the things that will be helpful to you, as I indicated earlier, is go to the lab and watch the video that will be associated with this, because you will see a lot of these cues or a lot of these directions and what they mean and how the floor director then will communicate those to the rest of the crew. All right, well, that ends chapter 4 and this section on camera operation, some microphones, and some floor directing. As a reminder, again, I'll repeat, watch that lab again. And we will have a lab covering exposures, or actually you will be working with the either the media specialist or one of the interns to give you hands-on demo on how to use the field cameras, or at least how to set them up and how they work. Okay, so be sure to do all of that as well. As usual, remember, take notes. I hope you did take notes, and if you didn't, you go back and quickly skim over what I went over. Remember, you can download this the slideshow and go over the lab. And as always, come see me during the office hour or email me with any questions that you may have. So thank you for joining, everyone, and I hope you have a productive week.